I'm Stephanie Rogie. I'm the education coordinator. Rogie Kinseth, I'm sorry. I never throw my husband's name in there. I'm the education coordinator for the Missoula County Weed District. I certainly do not have all the answers. I'd love to have them all for you. And I will take anything I can't answer for you back to my office and figure out some sort of an answer for you. Okay, so at the end I'll pass something around if you have additional questions, but we have such a small group. Please don't feel uncomfortable. There's no stupid question, okay? Feel free to just ask. Okay, we're gonna start pretty basic, and I'm looking for someone to tell me what is a weed?
That's not it.
You don't know it.
Oh, there we go. It's very basic. It's the plant we don't want, right? Okay? It's a plant out of place. Okay? Some of us like dandelions, right? Some of us hate dandelions.
But they're so useful.
Yep. Exactly. So this is pretty biased, right? A weed can be just about anything, right? Tomato plant growing in carrots. Okay? So what is an invasive weed?
One that takes over.
Takes over. What are some other characteristics we think about when we hear the word invasive?
That's not native.
Good.
They stick in your socks.
Yep, they're a nuisance. Good. What else? What do you think of when you think of invasive weed? Just anger, shoulders raised. Tough to get rid of. Okay. Okay. So, because I can't come up with a really easy one, I do this. It's a plant that's pretty successful at colonizing disturbed, but potentially productive sites. Okay, and they're able to maintain their abundance even with continued disturbance. Does that sound pretty accurate of an invasive weed? Yeah. Okay. Notice that I didn't say noxious weed yet, have I? Okay, because it's so far beyond that at this point, invasive weeds. We aren't just always battling noxious weeds. There are other plants that are equally as annoying and frustrating to try to treat besides noxious weeds. Who knows what that one is that I put up there with invasive? It's not foxtail. I mean, you may call it foxtail, but that's actually a different plant. This is the one that gets caught in your socks all the time. Cheatgrass. Yep, cheatgrass. That's a great description for cheatgrass, okay? It loves disturbed sites. It easily colonizes, okay? And it's an annual, winter annual. Okay, so we know a weed is a plant out of place, and an invasive weed is, you know, a plant that's really great at establishing where we disturb the ground. Okay, so then we have our noxious weeds. Okay, and our noxious weeds actually have to go through a political process. They have to be voted onto a list. Okay, you all could petition a plant to be put on the noxious weed list. Did you guys know that? Okay. Each of your counties has their own separate noxious weed list. And you can petition plants to be put on that as well. But it does have to go through this process. There's a Montana law, I'll read it to you, that says a noxious weed is any exotic plant species established or introduced in the state that may render land unfit for agriculture, forestry, livestock, wildlife, or any other beneficial uses, or that can harm native plant communities. That's what a noxious weed is. Okay? And to date, we have 32 on the list. I heard a lot of them. So an easy way of describing just a plain old noxious weed is a non-native, that's key, a non-native plant with the potential to seriously impact a plant community. Okay? And that's primarily what I like to try to teach about, but inevitably I get questions about all those other invasive weeds that you guys are dealing with, the cheatgrasses, the mullins, the mustards, because they're just as invasive sometimes as these noxious weeds. I didn't read you any of those facts. Did you like any? Do those look promising? That there's 7.6 million acres, or 8% of Montana is covered with noxious weeds. That's probably even higher now, I would guess. That's from a while ago. And spotted knapweed, or state flower, covers about almost 3 million acres. Wouldn't it be easier if we just declared it a naturalized native plant? Then we could quit hating it so much. Right?
When you say those numbers are growing,
that we're losing the battle against noxious?
I would say no, but I think that people are more, I think we're clued in on it now, you know, and there's more, people are looking at it. So I think we have a better handle on what's really out there. Plants are added, plants are, you know, we have new ones coming in. So I think that that's probably a little bit higher, but no, I don't think we're losing the battle. If you think about it, they've been around so long, noxious weeds, spotted knapweed in particular, that, you know, I think those numbers probably are going down, but we still see it. Maybe it's not as abundant, but it's still there. So it's still potentially covering the same amount of area, but maybe less dense. Our noxious weed list is the Department of Agriculture, who is in control of that, has kind of made it a little complicated, and they have broken this down into priorities. And each of these priorities have different management strategies with them. And I wonder if this, I'm going to hand this out for you later. It's got all the listed weeds in there. No, it doesn't. But they prioritize these by the amount of infestation across the state. So our priority 1A, the only plant in that one is yellow star thistle. And it's a 1A because it's not present in Montana. We have found it, but as you see, the management criteria for that one is to basically seek and destroy, which we do anytime we find an infestation. Locally, we found, after the fires up in Lolo, up 12, we found one plant along Highway 12 the year after the fires. So most likely, how do you think that got there? Most likely off a vehicle, because we had people coming from Idaho where it is a problem, coming over to help battle our fires. So, not to say they're not present, it does say this on here, but we do have a few infestations, I should say plants, probably is a more accurate word, around the state, but we do seek and destroy those.
For the surrounding states have yellow star thistle. Which one?
Idaho,
Idaho.
Idaho, Washington.
Washington.
Lewis and Hill is just covered with that stuff.
Really? Yeah. So a lot of the weeds that we have on our list, these first priorities that we're going through, the weeds are problems in our surrounding states, and that's why we list them, so that there's money that can be allocated towards these plants if we do get an infestation. Priority 1B, limited presence in Montana, and again, it's eradication or try to contain infestations, and then education. Do any of you recognize any of those? Dyer's woad, flowering rush, that's one in the lakes. Flathead Lake has that. Japanese knotweed, which looks like bamboo. A big ornamental planting. We have it mostly in town, like as hedgerows. Purple loosestrife, that one's in Lake County in the wetlands. Rush skeleton weed. Eurasian water milfoil is a submerged plant, aquatic plant. Scotch broom is an ornamental plant that has escaped. It's really bad in Oregon. And then curly leaf pondweed, another submerged plant species.
Are we gonna have pictures?
Yep, yeah. Yep, I'll give you a book with all of them. I'm gonna give you a little quiz later, and I didn't want you to have your book first.
This man.
And then we move on to our priority 2A, and again, these are becoming more common around the state. And management, again, eradication if possible, containment where less abundant. And this is where they start to give the weed districts, you know, the overall authority to choose the management. Tansy ragwort, meadow hawkweed complex, which includes 3 different yellow hawkweeds, orange hawkweed, tall buttercup, pretty pepperweed, yellow flag iris, blue weed, and horiolisum. And then we got our 2Bs, and these are really kind of those common ones that everybody is battling. Okay, this is where your spotted knapweed and your thistle and your hound's tongues and your toad flax has fallen, oxeye daisy. Okay, and again, it's eradication or containment, and a lot of times it's just containment to try to manage these. And again, weed districts prioritize these. So in Missoula, our list, we didn't prioritize with A and B and like that. We tried to do it, it used to be category 1, category 2, category 3. And so Missoula County chooses to do it based on the abundance again, but we consider things new invaders, and that's our priority. It's the plants that we don't have many of is what we choose to treat instead of our more abundant spotted knapweed. Our budget wouldn't go very far on that. And then we have these priority 3 listed weeds with the state. They are not noxious weeds, but they put them on a list so that when they become a problem, there's funding that can be allocated to them for research, education, whatever. But if they're not on the list, they're not allowed to give money towards them. And notice Russian olive, that's the newest added noxious regulated plant species. It also prevents the sale of these plants. And that's why that one's on there. Hydrilla is one that the aquatic trade and sales, fish aquariums. That's one that they put on the list to prevent it from being sold. We have removed plants from the list as well. Yes?
I find it interesting, the Russian olives on there when we use that so much
Yes.
for wildlife.
Yes, it was a
categories.
huge battle and
Yeah.
very emotional for people, especially on the eastern half of the state where there are windrows and they do provide habitat for birds and things. Yeah, it's, they're gonna make people remove Russian olive. They just no longer want it sold. It is being spread by birds.
Yeah.
So, but it can do a lot of damage in riparian areas.
It's taken over the Yellowstone River.
Yeah.
And yet encounters.
Yes, yep, that's another one that's, is a problem. And they had a biocontrol for tamarisk that they had to quit, releasing because, there were songbirds nesting in the tamarisk trees for obvious reasons because they choked out all the other native trees. But, you know, we get into those, the circle of life, and we need to protect our songbirds as well. Okay, so what is the traditional weed approach? What do you guys do when you get weeds? What do you think?
Kill it, brothers.
Yeah, kill them, right? I don't know how you're doing it, but that's what we think instantly, isn't it? Weeds, oh my God, kill them, okay? Yes, that's how we traditionally think about it. I'm here to try to change your mind today. And what happens when we treat them? They come back, don't they, typically, okay?
Or your dog gets stuck in the
Or you get so angry, you put your dog between the tree.
It hurts your tree.
Okay, so we get caught in a cycle when we do this traditional weed control. We identify a weed, we treat it however we treat it, we open up a space on the ground, our weeds come back, we treat it, open up the space, the weeds come back. Why do you think that's happening?
We're not getting rid of the seeds.
Yeah, there's still available seeds and things, right, down there? So we get caught in this cycle. And our traditional weed approaches are ideal for those invasive weeds that we defined earlier. They're easy, they colonize disturbed sites easily. And they can increase in density with repeated disturbance, okay? So our traditional weed approach is contributing a little bit to our invasive species, our weed problem, okay? So I like to think about it this way, traditional weed approach. I broke my arm, and instead of getting it fixed, I decided I'll just take some Advil and make it feel better, and continue using it. And it feels okay, so I continue to garden or do whatever. And I hurt it more, so I take more Advil. So I continually am treating my symptoms, but not the cause of my pain, okay? And that's typically how we are treating our weeds. We're just treating the symptoms, but not the actual cause, okay? So what I want people, or I try to help people do, is to begin our weed treatments with the end in mind, okay? We want to kill the weeds, certainly, but what is your ultimate goal? What is it that you want there when you're removing this plant?
Something else.
Something else, but we need to be thinking about that when we're going in and we're creating these disturbances. Because ultimately we want functioning plant communities, right? No matter what we're doing. So, my boss, who's been at this for 45 years out of Missoula, when herbicides became a huge controversial thing, had to try to come up with a way to deal with these things that involved using several other tools. And he came up with this chart, which urges people to ultimately try to think of all these things while using all of our different integrated weed management tools to push towards our desired vegetation, okay? And a big one that we tend to forget is the use of the land. What are we actually using the land for? Okay, and that's why I had you guys write it down. So when you look at your little card, what are you using your land for? You know, I own 3 whole lots in town here, and I'm usually using it for chicken farming and urban deer population, basically. But if I own the property, I think my ultimate goal would be wildlife, attracting wildlife. Okay, and so then I would have to think, if I want to attract wildlife, I'm going to need native vegetation that they want to utilize, good habitat, you know, plants, perennials, grasses. I need some trees, some shrubs. Okay, I'm trying to think of it that way. So we really need to figure out what we're actually using our land for. Are we grazing it? Are we going to log it? You know, are you selling your timber? We need to establish this before we start removing vegetation from our land, okay? And then you really do need to assess what your current vegetation is. You know, you have to kind of know what you have out there. Because, like I said, when you're removing one vegetation, whatever you have out there is what's going to fill in that space you're opening up, okay? So, this can also help us to prioritize. Instead of just thinking, you know, like this gentleman was telling me all the weeds he has. He can't possibly go out and just blanket treat his whole property, okay? By assessing what your current vegetation is and the condition it's in, you're able to prioritize where you want to go after your weeds, and it's going to cost you a little less money because you're not trying to just blanket treat everything, okay? And then what we're doing with our tools, our hand pulling, our herbicide treatments, our mowing, our grazing, our biocontrol, is we're causing plant succession. Does anyone know what think they want to take a stab at plant succession? Do you know what that is? It's trying to move one plant community to another. It's starting from succession is like starting from bare ground, then we get our annual species, then we switch to perennial species, to woody shrubs, on up to trees. That's plant succession. And anytime we incorporate a management tool, we are causing plant succession. So succession can ultimately equal disturbance, which we need to start using to benefit your property instead of encouraging bad things to come in, okay? So here's the definition of succession. The process where one plant community changes to another. It involves the immigration and the extinction of species, coupled with changes in the relative abundance of different species. Okay, so we're wanting to push our plant communities in this plant succession, but you got to remember that the succession is you're utilizing your tools to make this happen. There are 3 causes of plant succession, and they're these things. Site availability. That one's pretty obvious. That is just your open ground, right? Your available spaces. That something is going to grow if you don't put something you want there. Something ultimately is going to find its way there, okay? Species availability. What do you have there? You know, what seeds are in the ground? What plants are nearby? Okay? because those are going to be what fills your site availability. And then species performance. Are your plant species able to get the resources they need to thrive and to grow successfully? Okay, these are the causes of plant succession. And invasive species are the result of one of these three things in disrepair. Okay, that's how we get our invasive plant species. Some other things about invasive species, not real positive things. I always feel like a Debbie Downer. Invasive species live longer and they grow faster than our native species. And they produce more abundance of seeds, and they can go dormant. So they're really successful at colonizing. And that's why it's so hard to reestablish a native species when we're battling these invasive species. Our native species are adapted to live with our crazy growing conditions. Short growing season, go dormant. Maybe in the spring if we get early moisture, start growing a little bit earlier, but they're fairly short growing season, okay? So it would be great if you could all just kind of think about this the next time you're going out and you're considering a management strategy, is first figure out, what am I using that particular space for where I want to remove this plant? And is it pretty bad? I mean, should I just focus on a satellite infestation and treat the perimeter of that? There's a lot to think about. You want to use our tools to start that succession, but to benefit you. You want it to benefit your vegetation instead of encourage something else to come in, so that we can also ultimately move towards this desired vegetation. And if we change our approach from that traditional weed treatment cycle to this, it's a continuous process, and it forces you to adapt your management so that you can continue towards your desired vegetation. Okay, versus just killing something. You're wanting to push towards your desired vegetation. And if you consider all these things, that's going to help you. And it helps you, if you approach it this way, it's going to help you find the cause of your infestation. What's causing you to have these infestations? Okay, you're going to be able to identify this. And this is seriously a very brief introduction for this chart that I know everyone wants to just close their eyes at, right? Who wants to read it? But it's EBIPM, which is ecology-based invasive plant management. And this process helps you to determine, again, why am I getting these infestations? They're like rules of thumb for management, okay? And it's based on those plant succession framework, the site availability, species availability, or performance, and what's the other one? Species availability, okay? And I encourage you to go to this website and look at it. I'm not saying you should follow this. This is like designed for land managers, like our state, federal, to help them better manage lands. But it really can help you to start thinking of it differently so that you are more successful when you're going out to manage your land. And I just like sarcastic things, so I put that up on there because if you ever need your plant killed, I'm the person to call. But check that out, really do. There's a ton of information there. You can look at, this is just one part of it. I'll pass this around. But go online. If you wanted me to print you one and mail it to you, I would be willing to do that. But it's worth checking out.
Is that a booklet then? When you go?
Yes, it's a huge, there's many different chapters on things, and this one in particular is the guidelines to implement ecology-based invasive plant management.
So you can go down there and select whatever sections you want and print them out.
And it's all free. You can order it, and I think they'll mail it to you for free, or you can print it.
I see.
You guys, I didn't record myself. I'm gonna get in trouble. Are there any other questions on that before I move on to the next part? Do you think I'm crazy?
Yeah.
I know. but we kind of do get caught up in just thinking about killing weeds all the time, don't we? And then they just come back, and it's not always desirable. I tend to see, we go out on our open spaces here, and especially in Missoula, the leafy spurge is terrible. I mean, it's very obvious in the L over here is that ugly colored green, yellow. It's a tough one to kill, and we could go out, we could herbicide treat it. It's not gonna take it away, but what it does take away, there's not the good underneath to replace it. So we would just replace the leafy spurge issue with some more leafy spurge, and then probably a terrible cheatgrass problem. So forcing ourselves to look at it a little bit differently, you know, it's gonna be a long-term thing, but we need to have something beneficial growing there before we go in and remove an entire line of vegetation. And I will say that with that, the sheep grazing up there, that's been going on like 8 years. People don't tend to think it's working. It really has reduced the density of the spurge up there. And the manager of the open space, has incorporated a humongous revegetation, reseeding effort along with the grazing. Leafy spurge is probably one of the worst weeds to me. I consider it one of the hardest ones to eliminate. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a comment on that. I didn't believe in grazing initially, but I live up in the rattlesnake here and on Mountain Jungle Saddle, the trailhead.
Yeah.
And just watched over the years the reduction in
Yes.
knapweed. So
Yes.
I would agree that it really is.
Yeah.
It is a benefit. It has to really change that up there.
And again, it's such a long process, because when you get ground that's so abused like that, it's so tough to try to get it back to a natural state. And an unintended consequence of a good one, of the grazing was that the sheep, you know, they're trained animals. You have to train them to eat. You can't just buy a lamb and they're like, I'm gonna consume your leafy spurge. But they're trained to eat the spurge, but they started eating the Dalmatian toadflax and have almost eliminated it from the area. But it was also coupled with biocontrol. So we found through these processes that you can have biocontrol and still graze, and they still work together, which you wouldn't normally think you could have. Put a bug out on a plant and have something eat the plant. But that has really worked well for him. I will tell you though that the sulfur cinquefoil increased where the sheep were grazing. They were moving around in their wool. And so that has increased. And now they know better that they need to pin them for like 48 hours. And they also are passing those through to eliminate that seed source. So, I mean, it's a learning process. Everybody, I mean, no one's doing it right. So, you know, we all fail. It's fine. That's how we learn, right? I'm not smart enough to do it right the first time. Definitely not. All right, I'm gonna make you guys take a quick. Yeah, what you think, you know? And I made it actually difficult too. I didn't make it easy for you to identify these things. Oh, you said you didn't. You said you didn't know.
They just take our zero and move it.
I'm totally being like that, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna also hand out, I'll let you try to use your books, but you don't get very long to take the test, so how fast can you flip through your book, right? The weeds, this is a publication put out by the Montana Weed Control Association. And it's okay. It lists all the weeds in there. It's trying to tell you why you care about invasive weeds. My favorite is the guy fishing on the front that looks like the Marlboro Man. So that's what I was doing. Bit of an outdated picture, it seems like.
Awesome mustache.
Yeah, exactly. It is an awesome mustache. Okay, let's see here. Well, it did record me, guys. I was just kidding. Okay, we're gonna continue on. Thanks, Martin. Okay. So there's only 15 of them here, and as you see, I'm really trying to trick you, so I'm doing close-up shots of plants. So you get about 20 seconds to look at it, maybe even less before I go to the next one.
Oh, so we're just identifying these?
You know that you've had this on you. I know everybody. My children are magnets. This one.
You want the Latin name or?
Yes, please. Now it's easier. They're birds. Yeah, we need birds. Write it down.
It gets stuck in my dog all the time.
Oh, this is great.
All right, moving on to the next one. Unfortunately, they're all pretty, and you know, some of our weeds have come from, a lot of our weeds have come from ornamental plantings. Not this one, though.
Are they good for anything at all?
Yeah, there
No, I mean,
are,
like, could you-
there are some
Could
that,
you boil them up and make them into something that's?
I mean, there are some that
There is
are
nephew
used
honey.
for, yes. And that gets to be controversial because people get really sassy about treating that weed when they have,
They're honeybees.
which is fine, I understand. That's a huge, they wanted to play herbicides for colony collapse disorder, which is kind of a blanket term in general for honeybees. But what's the difference between an herbicide and an insecticide?
One kills weeds, the other kills insects.
Yes, so the herbicide is not designed to kill a living insect. What, through a lot of research, they're finding is that what happens when people are applying herbicides is if there's a surfactant in the herbicide, you know, the stuff you add to make it bind to the plant, that's what's killing the bee. So, I mean, there's a lot to learn there too. I've been going to classes about bees. Okay, going on. Did you ever want to be that close on two of these particular weeds? No. Did you ever think you'd have to look at them that close? Focus on the color of that one to try to get your answer. I may have just talked about that one. Cal, what's that one?
Great.
It's pretty.
Pretty nice.
Go to the next one. I have prizes for whoever gets the most right. This one is the leaf of a rather annoying one. Likes to live by water. Fern. Very ferny looking leaves. Go on to the next one.
He's cute.
That's the seed head of that one. Our state flower. How about this one?
Is that the stuff that's more?
It's not medical marijuana. It looks like it. What else does it kind of look like? What type of fruit do you eat that looks like that leaf? Not an artichoke. Does it look like a strawberry leaf? A little bit? Same family.
You're giving
How about this one? This one likes hay fields. I think when we buy hay, we move this one around a lot.
What number are we on?
Oh, I don't know.
This, no, this is 8. I think.
7, yep, 8. What color's the flower? White?
Yeah.
Okay, that's your hint. Moving on. Okay. Someone should know this. I heard him say it.
Oh, let's see. Sorry. See orange flower.
Oh, that's from your.
Next one. This one has a use. This one was cultivated for medicinal use.
Yeah, not tangerines.
For mild depression.
It's probably boil it up or something.
I think they extract an oil. Probably it is probably through a boiling. How about this one? That's a really close-up picture of one of them. It'd be way too easy to show you the flower. All right, moving on. What's that friendly looking one? I certainly hope no one has this one.
Oh, that's pretty.
That one's vicious.
Chewing disease.
Yes.
Vegan.
Okay, next one. I think this one looks like several plants. I believe that in that book, they're colored to what the flower color is. Yes. So find the yellow background when you're quickly flipping through. Next one. Maybe not necessarily a noxious one. Won't be in your book. Nature's toilet paper.
It totally is.
Yep.
Only girls
All right, last one. Not a noxious weed, but I did talk about it. It's a regulated one. All right, let's go over. What did anyone get for number 1? Hound's tongue. Those are the nutlets. Number one was the nutlet that we get caught on our clothes, or our dogs, or animals of any sort with fur.
Can you show us the pictures as you do?
Yeah, I have them coming up.
Oh.
We could do it that way if you'd prefer. I have the management, so here's my funny slide. So there is no silver bullet, right? We all know that? Okay, so whatever you're doing is the right way until you figure a better one. Okay? So it was hound's tongue. The first one was hound's tongue. Okay, and what you were looking at was the nutlet. Here, these. Okay? And this is a biennial plant, which means it just grows those leaves the first year, and then bolts and flowers the second year, okay? So when we're thinking of control methods, hand pulling, pretty effective, isn't it? Okay, if you can get in there on its first year of growth, you don't have the option of getting any of these birds, because you've removed the source. Another strategy I strongly recommend for people, I know it's time consuming and annoying, is put on some rain pants and your coat and go out and bag any of those old standing skeletons, I call them. Okay, because we can't prevent the deer from moving around, okay? That's how we're getting them moved around. Are we grazing animals? They're gonna move them around, okay? Your wildlife's moving them, your dog, okay?
So every one of those seeds, it is potential growth.
Yes,
Even in the.
and inside of the nutlet is 4 seeds. So, bag them, you can pile them and burn them, or just send them to the dump. Okay, but I strongly advise you to remove those seeds. It's really gonna help you out. Okay? Mowing, mowing, if you think about it, you're just going over and you're knocking the top off, okay? So because it's a biennial plant, it's only gonna work on the year that you're getting a flower bolt, and it's gonna bolt again. So you're just gonna have to continue to mow it, okay? There is not currently a biocontrol for this one because there are 2 similar native plant species that the biocontrol may potentially attack when the hound's tongue is done. So they're still working on that. Grazing, not recommended because it's poisonous to livestock. They typically don't eat it unless they're stressed, okay? And then we do have some herbicides that work on this one that I've listed down below. What?
What about llamas? Don't llamas eat that?
I think in general it is toxic. Yes, too. I've never heard that llamas are preferred grazing for this, but you might be right. I could look into that. Herbicides are effective on the rosettes, so the leaves, and the bolting plants. By the time it's flowering, don't waste your time. Okay, you've missed the boat. It's already completed its life cycle. Don't waste your money and energy spraying it at this point. Okay, you can dig it up at that point, but it's going to produce seed. Okay, and here's 3 herbicides that we find work well on it: Escort, Telar, and 2,4-D. And did I hand out? Yes. So in this handout right here, we produced it for Missoula County, but it's going to have these weeds in there, and it's going to talk more in depth about each of these management techniques. And it's going to give you the rates that you need to apply the herbicide in here. And it'll have other comments in the herbicide section like don't use near groundwater, you can use to the water's edge, this one works under trees, don't use by trees, things like that, okay? So it's a good guide to have. Anyone have any questions about hound's tongue?
Obviously, the mowing is only effective.
Yeah.
It's not effective on rosettes, but you wouldn't really want to mow that much later than that, would you? Because you're going to spread the seeds over.
Well, when it's bolting, so before it has buds, you can mow things that have closed buds and you're still okay. But once the flower even begins to open, it probably will have enough energy up in there to complete its life cycle. So you could go and cut it and it still will mature. So just like when it shoots its stem up, that's a good time to go in. But again, it's gonna start putting up.
No flowers.
Yeah, that's what they tend to do, trying to complete their life cycle. These pop right out, they have a tap root, like a big carrot type root. that if we stay moist like this, pop out of the ground pretty nicely. And, you know, if they're just the rosettes, you can pop them out and leave them. The second one, so keep track of how many you're getting right on your quiz, was Canada thistle. Looked very similar to a spotted knapweed flower though, didn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So your identification characteristic would be the spines on the plant, right? And who has Canada thistle? Okay, thistle sucks. Canada thistle sucks. Canada thistle is unlike the other thistles because 70% of this plant is underground. This one has rhizomatous roots. So when we till it, when we dig it, it is spreading it. It just will shoot up somewhere else. So this one's a tough one to control. The other thistles are musk thistles, bull thistles, things like that, have a taproot. Okay? And they're easier to control. Not that they're fun to touch when you're trying to remove them. But that's why Canada thistle is so hard to control.
They'll shoot those too, don't they?
They will, a lot of animals, I put that it's not recommended, but a lot of animals will like to eat the flowers,
Yeah.
which is a good thing, but they're not gonna do much more than that because of the spines on the plant. Except for maybe they will, you never know what they're gonna eat. But mostly I would say they're gonna go after your flower. Hand pulling, not real effective. You can do it, but it's going to take consistency and you're gonna be frustrated. It looks, I have it in my yard, which sucks for my boys that never have shoes on. But I used to go and pop each one of them out as much root as I could, and then it would rain and then they sprout back up. Okay? Yeah.
There's a seed insect that goes
There is.
after Canada thistle.
There is.
And there's some butterflies that go after it, but
It's not real effective, and that's why I have not available. I think you can actually purchase them from some dealers, like people that sell biocontrol, but it's not real effective. It produces big gulls, those knots on the plants. So they're out there. If you look, they're probably already on the plant. Mowing, you know, we can reduce the seeds by mowing, but it's never going to take the plant away. But it will reduce, you know, your seed source, which is a big puffy, floats in the air puff. So that would help. Grazing, we talked about, not really recommended, but animals do like to eat flowers. Herbicides can be effective, and here's a few of them. And then note that I put down sometimes which season is the best. Milestone is a great choice for Canada thistle, and we find that fall treatment works really well. But you kind of have to let it put all of its energy into growing, so that is when you're going to want to be going and knocking off the flowers. But that, an herbicide treatment in the fall, after you've let the plant put all its energy into growing, is more effective than treating it in the spring. But certainly do it whenever it's convenient, or you can get to it.
Sorry, is there a point where it's too late in the fall?
It's too late in the fall. I mean,
I mean, after it's already gone to seed, you want to catch it before it goes to seed, right?
yes, yeah. But then you're gonna have regrowth, you know, because we go sort of, we do a life cycle and then we get moisture and then stuff starts to grow again. So I think, no, you could still, I don't think you would.
Well, when is the right time, I guess?
I would say fall, before it flowers, prevent it from flowering if you
Before it
can.
flowers, okay.
Yeah, but you want it to be putting its energy into making that flower. Because then what's happening is you're sucking all that energy out of the roots, so your herbicide is translocated through the plant better.
Okay.
So you've weakened your plant because they're like, hey, we're gonna make flower. And then you treat it with an herbicide and it does a better job.
start
And they flower in the fall.
I mean, they flower whenever they can throughout the summer and.
So if they're starting to flower earlier in the summer, you should try to head in then.
You know, yes, or just prevent flowering
Okay.
so that you can get more growth with your herbicide treatment.
So cut the flowers?
I would cut the flowers just to prevent the seeds from, you know, being spread around, yes, if you can. Leafy spurge, who got that one? Thank you. Okay, that's a funny looking little plant, that's for sure. It's got that milky juice. I show kids in my 5th grade classes that I go out to the root system of one of these. They made a banner of a root of a leafy spurge that a road crew found, and it went 26 feet deep in the ground.
Oh, wow.
So, if you can imagine it can do that, and then you think about the infestations like on Mount Jumbo over here, it's got a significant root system. So hand pulling is not effective at all because on the root of leafy spurge there's little root nodes, and if you go to a spurge plant and you try to pull it up, it's going to snap off. And what happens is that root knows, oh my goodness, my food source, the above ground vegetation is gone. I need to put up many more plants to sustain my root system. So it encourages growth. That milky juice that the plant produces too when you break it off acts as a growth hormone if it touches those root nodes. So it's really adapted to be able to grow well. Okay, so hand pulling, not the best option. Okay, mowing, not real effective, but I know someone personally that went in and mowed very high to prevent it from seeding every year, coupled with reseeding and herbicide treatments. So, you know, if something's, just don't mow it to the ground. You can give things a try, even though I've said they're not effective. If it's working for you, great. Please jump in at any point if you're doing something to one of these plants that seems to be really effective besides pouring diesel on them. You don't want to do that. Tell everyone, okay? I did have someone tell me that one time. I was like, oh, I don't want to know. I got rid of it, thank you. Biocontrol, 12 biocontrol have been released for leafy spurge in the US. We have a lot around here that are successful. The flea beetles are very successful on these, and you can still get those. They're distributed. You can contact me or your local weed district. They'll get you in contact with our statewide biological weed coordinator and get you some of these insects if you're interested. Keep in mind that when you're doing biocontrol, using biocontrol, you really have to have an awful situation for it to be effective. People want to do holistic treatments, which is great. I'm all about it, but biocontrol only works when there's a ton of food source for them, because they need to breed and make big populations before they start to actually kill off plants. 15 years, right? And it's a cyclical pattern. If you're only going to use biocontrol, it's going to just cycle from high abundances of weeds to getting high abundances of insects that start to kill your plants, and then as the plants go away, the bugs start to die, and then your plants come back, and it'll just, if you just left it alone, it'll continue to cycle like that. And a good example of that is up on the bison range with the St. John's wort. The biocontrol is very effective on the St. John's wort, and if they have left it to be, and it just moves around. So that's what biocontrol will do. So biocontrol is one that you would introduce, let it really weaken your infestation, and then you would come in with a different type of weed treatment to really get a good control. Dalmatian toad flax. And there's another toad flax, the one that I think you're referring to that you're calling butter and eggs is called yellow toad flax,
Right.
or common. This one's Dalmatian. It has a bigger leaf surface. It's very waxy leaf if you touched it. Looks like a snapdragon flower. Okay, this one is definitely an estate ornamental. Somebody told me once that the infestation at Yellowstone National Park was brought in by the First Lady of Yellowstone, who had planted this in her flower cutting gardens for the table bouquets. So that's how these plants get here, unfortunately. Hand pulling can be effective on new infestations, but this one again spreads from root fragments and has rhizomes under the ground. So you can pull it out and get a significant bit of root, but there's always still a bit in the ground. Mowing, not so much effective. There are biocontrol for this one that are very effective. They are stem weevils, and these are also available for distribution in this area if you have an interest. They're one of the very earliest ones to be available, typically in May. Grazing, I told you that the sheep picked up on this one all on their own and have almost eliminated it up on the hillsides where it is over here on Jumbo. So it's very effective. It can be, but again, like it says, they're gonna graze and it's gonna resprout. So basically, the grazing is preventing the seed source. A plant like this can produce 500,000 seeds. Just that one plant right there. They're like little cups full of poppy seeds, each individual flower. So just eliminating the seed source is that's a pretty good thing. You're successful if you're doing that. So you can't let yourself get down on these weed treatments because you really are doing something, even if it's not killing the plant. And herbicides are effective on them. This is when you have to add the surfactant so that the herbicide was attached to the plant, okay? Because of that waxy leaf, the surfactant breaks that wax down in the leaves, letting the herbicide penetrate. When I take our 5th grade out, I show them that you can make the flower talk, like Snapdragon and catch it. You gotta find humor in these things or you lose your mind, okay? Did anyone get this one? This is the one that looks like a fern. Common tansy, kind of flies under the radar a little bit. No one actively necessarily treats this one. It really loves the rivers. If you look, we see these little button flowers all along the river, can get up to 6 feet tall. I believe some uses for it where if you rub the leaves, it's got a pretty potent smell. I've been told that people have used that as a fly repellent on like horses and stuff. So ultimately all these things probably had a purpose at one point, and they just get out of control. Hand pulling can be effective. It really sucks to try to pull one of these out of the ground, especially if it's a mature plant. It's so tough to get the roots out of the ground. Mowing, again, what we're doing is eliminating that seed source by mowing, okay? So another good rule of thumb is don't mow, you don't want to whack any of these plants to the ground, okay? You're always wanting to mow high. You're just wanting to knock the top off, and that's going to allow any of your good vegetation around it to be able to succeed, as well as not allow this plant to be able to grow below the height of your blades and flower, okay? No biocontrol that I know of. Grazing is not effective. Herbicides can be effective. Again, it's a tough one because it's always near water typically, but we're finding that it's moving up into our drylands as well. So, but these again, you need to do it during the bolt or the bud stage. So bolt is when it's putting up its flower stalk.
The best way is to dig it up.
Yeah, but it does suck, doesn't it? It's hard to get them out sometimes. Sometimes I have kids do it. Here's our state flower, right? Spotted knapweed. Did anyone get that one? That's the knapweed seed head. Like that's what it looks like, all the old growth last year. And that's how it got its name. The bracts, these are bracts of a flower, the spotted appearance. That's how it gets its name. Personally, this is a really easy one to kill, spotted knapweed. It's just so abundant, right? But it is certainly easy to kill. Hand pulling works great. Hand pulling the rosettes plus the old dead stalks instantly makes an area look way better if you have the time and patience. Not gonna get cancer, that's always a rumor that goes around from pulling knapweed. It does have it can cause skin irritation, but I would be dead if pulling spotted knapweed caused cancer. Mowing can be very effective, and typically the range of mowing would be July 15th to August 15th is the optimal time. And again, you don't want to lower that blade of the mower too low because this plant really is good at adapting to grow below your blade height. And it will flower and produce seed below the blade, okay? So that's when you wanna go in and mow, and it's a good time to be grazing it. Because grazing is the same thing, you're just removing your tops, your seed source.
If you're not in the hand pulling portion of that, or when you pull it up, if you are not successful in getting every bit of it, does that mean you didn't get any of it?
Typically, 2 inches of that root out of the ground, you probably have killed that.
You probably killed
Yeah,
it.
you get it if you
Yeah.
get the main, where it's.
Yeah, I call it the root crown.
Root crown.
Yeah, or the tap root. It is a tap root that sends off other little roots off, but yes, you're probably gonna be successful.
You gotta wait till the ground is moist.
There's one of them, and it might be that one, I'm not sure, that my brother found, that watering actually will
Yeah.
get rid of it, because he's got a whole, out in our big field.
Is
He's
he
got a
flood
whole
irrigating?
row of big, he's trying to grow big trees.
Yeah.
Big, big, big trees.
Mhm.
So right around those trees, it's been well watered.
Yeah.
And there's no knapweed within
Yeah.
those circles, but all around those circles.
I have heard that. And you know, that's an option for you to try, but that's gonna take significant water.
It is, like, in
But irrigation can reduce it a bit, but if you're not irrigating it enough, it's gonna be like, thank you.
yeah,
It get really bushy,
yeah.
okay?
Now, on the biocontrol,
Mm-hmm.
how long has the insects been around that they're controlling with?
I think the 70s is when we were lucky enough to get a research guy down in the Bitterroot Valley at the Corvallis Research Station, and he focused on this, and I think it was the 70s when he started, Jim Story. And he recently retired, I think he's actually hot in here maybe. So in reality, that's fairly new still, the biocontrol.
Yeah.
Yes, but, you know, as old as I am, at least, which is, funny, just kidding.
Do you know the name of the insect?
Yes, which one in particular are you talking about?
I
So
don't-
we have a root one, is what everybody is trying to obtain all the time, because the majority of them are already widespread. We have seed head ones, root borers, root crown, there's a moth. Cyclocleonus is the root one that doesn't fly, and that's why we still distribute it.
Is it in any of these books about that?
I don't know. Probably not. I will send around a sign-up sheet, and you put down the things that you want me to get you information on
Okay.
about that one. Yep. And I, every year, try to put a blast out about collections. I try to make the insects free to people, because it is time consuming, because literally when we go out and collect the root weevil in particular, is you're hand picking them off the plants. And a typical release is 100 insects for that one.
We collected over by Plains, and they have those striped beetles that are about that big.
Yeah, to the knapweed.
And,
Yep.
they just go, I released them on my place and they just disappear. But we've got something that looks like a leaf hopper, and it defoliates the tops, and that's been pretty good, so.
So with the biocontrol, the reason I also invite people out for these collections is you get a bit of a clue as to their life cycle. Like, now you wouldn't see any of them, right? So in the spring, you could go out and randomly sample where you release these plant, from the root one in particular, pull your root up and split it in half, and inside of there will be a little grub-looking larvae, okay? And that's your biocontrol now. And then as the summer progresses, they mature and eat their way out. And then you start seeing them at the tops of the plants. But, for a majority of the year, you're not seeing them. So it's always good to come out on these collections just to learn, even if you don't want any of the bugs. What they're doing, you can see it actually happening and see, what phase of their life they're in. Because otherwise you think they're gone. They probably aren't gone, because I've gone to things to collect and they love it there.
I've done it for several years.
Really?
Markford.
Yes, good, you're doing everything right.
Well, the only thing I can think of, the ants and the spiders.
Well, and the birds really enjoy them because they're fairly significant bugs. So that could be too.
Now, if you do any of these in tandem, like trying
Yep.
herbicides plus the bio, I mean, is there a way?
Those are the two I would never recommend.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yep.
Is there a big ways that you, defeat one?
Yes, so if you do want to do biocontrol, you're gonna have to halt your herbicide applications for at least 5 years. Or reserve those for the perimeter of an infestation, to try to shrink your infestation. But if you're gonna, buy insects and really try them, you need to give them 5 years. And then you've got to let them start to deplete your knapweed or whatever you put them on. And then at that point, you could come in and treat with an herbicide, because ultimately you're gonna kill your biocontrol by removing their.
And I imagine mowing and all that is the same.
Mowing is fine, grazing is fine to use with biocontrol. There's a study up by Polson, you live in Polson.
Right.
There's a grazing study that's been going on up in Polson to see whether grazing affects the biocontrol, and it's been working really well.
With mowing also?
No, well, mowing would be the same as grazing. So you could mow with biocontrol. I mean, I don't think you need to mow and graze. I think you would choose one or the other. Yeah. Any other questions about this one? Lots of herbicides work on it.
We have deer that eat the tops of water knapweed in the spring.
Yeah.
And what it does is just.
Yep. And they're pooping out
Instead
seeds
of
for
one,
other places too.
Flowering plant, it's about a half a dozen.
Yep, that happens. I don't know.
Mowing tends to do that too, which is spread out.
Yeah, well, timing is important with the mowing. You gotta hit it late enough that we're hoping they can't put up another season's growth. So that July to August 15th is a good span to look at.
How
Just,
about their skeletons? Then,
yeah, they're gonna have seeds in them. That's gonna be a seed source. Go out, you can go out and pull those too and throw them away.
but certainly you would never want to mow that.
I
In
wouldn't.
place of the skeleton.
You're just gonna throw them around, but something to also keep in mind is we've had knapweed so long, think about how much seed is in the ground already. So, that's one where we can go in and do a great job of killing it, but that's what's gonna come back because there's so much seed source in the ground. And the seeds are viable typically, I think on this one, for like 10 years.
9 to 12 years.
So, you're gonna have definitely a baby seedling is easier to deal with than a big plant, but you gotta remember that you're gonna have those coming back. Yep.
A similar situation for Canada thistle. Old seeds are viable for a long time.
Yeah, they're not as long, but it's up there. I think they're probably 8 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
seem to be better than this.
And they blow further away than knapweeds. Yeah. Yep. Next one is sulfur cinquefoil. This is the one that has the marijuana-shaped leaf. We have a ton of native cinquefoils. The way to identify the difference between them is on the sulfur cinquefoil, the hairs on the stem stand at a 90-degree angle. Okay, that's going to tell you that that's the invasive one. Hand pulling is not effective. You can do it. It irritates my skin like nothing else. It's like rubbing on fiberglass from those hairs. Not real effective. Mowing, again, can reduce your seed source, but it immediately regrows. There are no known biocontrol, probably is one that's not going to be a good candidate because of all the native plants, native cinquefoils. Herbicides can be effective. They're listed there. It gets its name from the color of the flower, too, the sulfur. White top. Who has white top? This is bad in like Lake County, and there's a lot of hay comes out of Lake County, so I think we're tend to be spreading it through purchasing of hay. Hand pulling, probably on new infestations can be effective, but it has a very deep root system, so it's just gonna sprout back. Same with mowing, you just are wanting to knock the flower off to prevent the seed No known biocontrols. Grazing can reduce their biomass and the seed production. Wonder why I put that one as an asterisk. If anyone finds it in here, I gotta keep talking why I would asterisk that. It probably has some sort of toxicity after a certain point for animals, is my guess. And I don't know where it is in here, but
Doesn't it have underground roots, kind of like?
it does, yes. And this one, you can kill with herbicide, but when you need to treat it is early spring. And what's it doing in early spring mostly? With weather. It's raining, so you can't really get out there. This is one we miss a lot. We miss the boat on this one because of weather. Because it's the best time to do it is early spring, your herbicide treatments. Orange hawkweed. This one's a tough one to control too. It likes to make big carpets, and especially in our forested areas, really enjoys those. It grows like a strawberry grows. It puts out stolons. Plus it does a big puff ball like a dandelion on all these individual flowers. This one, the flower follows the sun. It's kind of cool. Unfortunately, it's pretty too. Not when it makes that carpet, but it's an interesting one. And I didn't put the other hawkweeds in, but very similar options for treatment, for control methods. Hand pulling can be effective in small areas, but you have to remove all of the little runners, the stolons. Mowing, not effective, especially if it's already flowered, because I've cut some, laid them down, and they've gone to seed before. So once that flower's on, it's probably able to produce its seed. Grazing is not effective, no known biocontrol, and here are some of the herbicides that will work on that. Transline is a good one because you can use it under trees, for those of you that have this in your forested areas. St. John's wort. We do have a native St. John's wort, which is a higher alpine plant, but the way to identify St. John's wort is if you pull a leaf off, it's kind of fun to do, and hold it up in the air to light. There's little pinprick holes through the leaves. It's a great identification characteristic. This one was cultivated for medicinal purposes because it treats mild depression. We've seen this in the store. Bison range has it bad, but they do have a great biocontrol population there that's helping that. Hand pulling can be effective on small infestations. Mowing, not so effective. There are 5 insects that have been released in the US that are, like I said, have been very effective. Grazing is not recommended because it poisons livestock. For pale-skinned livestock, it makes them get sunburned really bad. And herbicides listed there that are effective, but notice that it says the pre-flower stage, and that's important to do, is to read the labels and what it says for each specific plant.
The best control is those Priceline beetles.
Yes.
You know, that was a big thing in many years ago. And then the hawkweeds came in and took
Took over where they were?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So see, that kind of goes back to the first presentation I gave you. There's replacing one with another. Yes. And they're kind of pretty. They have like a shiny or iridescent top. So you maybe will have seen them. Kind of like what I remember as a kid, like a potato beetle looks like. How they're kind of shiny, like that. Yep. Oxeye daisy. This one's kind of a tough one. It looks very similar to like our Shasta daisies. It really likes pastures. Animals avoid it, and so it's kind of an increaser plant. They eat around it, opening up space for it to grow vegetatively, plus get seed on the ground. Hand pulling can be effective, but again, you gotta get all those roots out. Mowing, not so effective, although it is in our hayfields, so we're cutting it in that. No biocontrol, again, because we have ornamental plants, probably isn't gonna be one that is a good candidate for biocontrol. And here's the herbicides that are effective on that. This one's tough to get to too, because once bolting and getting ready to flower, you've missed your opportunity again. So, and it's kind of inconspicuous there. The plant itself, when it's growing in with grasses and stuff, you're not always seeing it until it is flowering. So this is an early spring one too, that you have to really identify that you have and go out and seek it out.
It competes well with,
The tall buttercup?
buckwheat.
Oh, tall buttercup and oxeye daisy like to go hand in hand too in past years. Yellow star thistle, this is the one I said that we don't have in the state, but we have found plants occasionally. If you have a look out for it, it's a nasty one, we don't want this one, okay? It looks similar to a spotted knapweed flower, but it has those long spines on it. The stems are winged, so do all of you know what status looks like? It looks like it has wings all the way up along the stem. So it has a stem and then two wings off of it, all the way up. It's an identification characteristic. Let's see what your book looks like. It shows a close-up picture of that. Because it's a great identification characteristic to look for. It doesn't show it either. Well, kind of. But if you ever think you have this, don't hesitate to call any of your local weed districts, because we are interested in taking care of it right away. Free of charge. And I didn't put any control methods in there, because hopefully you don't have it. Rush skeleton weed, another one that kind of flies under the radar because I think it looks like sow thistle. You guys know what that is? Sow thistle, it has that little yellow flower and then it gets a little dandelion puffball too. It's all over. Kind of has little spikes on it. It looks similar. But this one, the seeds can travel like 25 miles. And this one up in the air, gets up in the wind patterns, okay? And so this one, we've started to find like in Ravalli County, and they're really attacking this hard because it's that one, and it's coming in from Idaho as well. And this is really what it looks like. It blends in with everything because it has very little stem leaves, so it just looks like a stickily plant with this big pattern of rosette at the bottom. So it's hard to see, but it's one that we really need to be on the lookout for. And here are some of its control methods. I gotta end. Common mullein, who hates this one? Yeah, I know, and this one's a huge disturbed site. You could not even have known to have a common mullein on your property, and then you dig some dirt up to do something, remove a tree, and all of a sudden you have mullein. The seeds are viable for like 100 years in the soil, okay? Some people really like it, this plant. They consider it a native plant. I mean, it's been around a long time, but it certainly increases in disturbed sites. Hand pulling is very effective. You just don't want it to go to seed for obvious reasons if they're going to live for 100 years. Mowing, not effective. Grazing, they don't really want to eat that furry leaf. And the herbicides work on it, but you do need to add something to be able to penetrate those hairy leaves. Okay, so you have to put an MSO or a silicone surfactant in with it. Not a noxious weed. Has been petitioned to be a noxious weed though. Added to the list.
If you hit that, I mean, that's a very mature one.
Yes, and it's a biennial plant.
You can see it starting at the end of the year.
Yeah,
I mean, if you were to use an herbicide on it,
very early. Yep,
that should take care
yep,
of it.
use it early. Okay. And our last one, cheatgrass. Remember, this one was the regulated species, and this is the one that we're finding is coming in after we effectively remove other plants. Cheatgrass, which I don't know what you would rather battle, sometimes is your knapweeds or your cheatgrass. The good thing about cheatgrass is very short-lived, it's an annual species, and the seeds are short-lived. So if you can effectively treat and remove the seeds that are viable in the soil, you're gonna be able to rid it. Okay, but this one is, removing a grass from a grass is a tough thing to do.
Well, what is right time?
So that's, yes, the right time is very late fall, after your good grasses have gone dormant, or first thing in the spring. If you walk around anywhere in my alley right now and you see green grass, it's probably cheatgrass, because it's a winter annual. So it overwinters as vegetation. So early spring, soon. If we keep our warm weather, you could be treating it soon. Okay, but like I said, it's very hard to remove a grass from another grass. And timing is so important, otherwise you're gonna end up killing your beneficial grasses. Okay, does anyone have any questions? I've run over a little bit. If you have anything you want me to get to you, sign up on your way out, and I will do my best to get it for you. Otherwise, did you get my email at all on that first? You certainly are welcome to email me, call me, and I will do what I can for you. Yeah, Missoula EDU place. Is there a marker here? No. Stephanie spelled funny. At Missoula EDU place. Or in the back of that Why Should I Care book, is a list of all of the state weed districts. And you can call that number and hopefully our receptionist will answer your phone and get you wherever you want to go. And thanks for coming. I hope you learned something.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, very good.
Did anybody get 100?
Oh yeah, what did everyone get?